Many of you may recall one of the themes of my Rosh Hashanah sermon, the first day of Rosh Hashanah this year, could have been easily encapsulated with the acronym WWMRD. What would Mr. Rogers do? And of course, highlighted then and still throughout this year, the sage advice going back 50 years to look for the helpers. And we have and are blessed in our country with so many different helpers that identify issues that they feel they can use their expertise in order to be of benefit to society and to others that may not be as fortunate as they are. And it was about a year or so ago that Rick Frankle had approached me to tell me about a project he had been working on that combines a number of different passions. And we decided on this morning for Rick to come and tell us a little bit about this very important project that he's been involved in as a true helper.
Shabbat shalom. Before I start, I, in all honesty, as I was walking up here just now, I had flashbacks to probably the first time that I stood in front of Beth Israel to share some thoughts, and it was on Liberty Road, and while I don't remember exactly what I said that day, I do remember that my father probably wrote everything that I said. As many of you know, I spent a lot of time at overnight camp, 49 summers to be exact, 7 seasons as a counselor, or 7 seasons as a camper, and the remaining 42 as a counselor, swim instructor, and eventually director. And the running joke in our family is that I spent so many summers at summer camp because my mom forgot to pick me up. But the reality is that my parents gave me a great gift when they sent me to summer camp. I truly believe in all that summer camp has to offer. I truly believe that summer camp, especially Jewish summer camp, builds better kids. Kids that are emotionally stronger, kids that embrace the Jewish values that we all cherish, kids that know how to manage their lives appropriately and independently, and kids who know how to function well in our society and in a group, something that we're in desperate need of today. And it does that in ways and to degrees that are unmatched in my heart, I believe, than anything else that we do with children. So with summer camp in mind, time for a little campfire story. About 8 years ago to this day, I found myself at Carver Vocational Technical High School in Baltimore City. Part of my job responsibilities as director was to do the hiring for the summer camp. And for those of you that don't know where Carver Votech is, it's just past Mondalman. If you go down that way, it's right across the street from Easterwood Park. I'll see some of the heads nodding. I know that's where my father spent his childhood, and it was right in the heart of what was in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the heart of the Jewish community. And I was down there because at Camp Airy we were starting a culinary arts program, and I, through a roundabout way, found out about a teacher that was there in the culinary program, and I was down there to interview him. So that day I met Chef Mike. He was an amazing man. He was a very large, loud, African-American man who loved to cook. He was always in his chef coat any time that I saw him. And when I first met him that day, we were in his classroom and he couldn't get the kids to leave. All they wanted to do was to spend time there. I've met with Chef Mike a number of times that winter and spring, and eventually he agreed to work at camp with us and help us start a new program. And during those times that I got to know Chef Mike, I also got to know the kids that were in his classroom. And we hear lots about the kids in Baltimore City, about their values and things along those lines. And getting to know those kids over the next couple of months, I realized how much they were just like the kids that I worked with every summer at camp. So ultimately, as Chef Mike planned his journey to Erie that summer, we also decided to bring a handful of his graduating seniors to camp. Some of them were going to be working as counselors in the cabins or at activities with the kids, and others were going to be working in our dining hall because they were in the culinary arts program. And we got to camp that June, and over the next couple of weeks at the beginning of the summer, I had an epiphany. I realized something that I hadn't expected. You see, at camp, at many of the camps throughout North America, especially the Jewish camps, we have a practice and have for many years of bringing counselors from other countries and other cultures as a cultural exchange. At Erie, we brought counselors from England and from the UK and from Israel, and there was a ton of logistics that were involved in getting those counselors to our camp and to teaching them about what we expected from them, about how they could share about their culture and their homes, and how they should be always on the lookout for things they could take back about Jewish life in America. And what the epiphany that I had when we brought these kids from Carver-Votech to camp was that getting across Northern Parkway was just as challenging as getting those kids across the Atlantic Ocean. It was amazing. So very quietly with my leadership team, we made it a goal that these counselors that were working at our camp were going to be part of a cultural exchange, just like the counselors that were coming from around the world. Then for me, after we did that, and we did it very quietly and very successfully. Then for me, retirement came, and I thought, that was after the summer of 2014, and I thought the story of this cultural exchange initiative and everything that it carried would, for me, pass on as part of my career. But the impact of the program really didn't play out until the fall of 2016. I got a phone call in September that night with it's gonna be hard, sorry, with some difficult news. Chef Mike, who was not working in the school system anymore, was instead working at a restaurant, and he was coming home to his home in Penn Lucy, 2 o'clock in the morning when he finished working, and you've all heard this story before, you know where I'm going. Somebody jumped out of a car as he was walking into his house, told him to give him his wallet, put his hands up, he gave him his wallet, and before he took off, Chef Mike became the 224th murder victim in Baltimore in 319 that year. Excuse me. A couple of days later, it was all over the news, so if you think back to that time, you probably heard about it. A couple of days later, there was an announcement that they were going to hold a vigil for Chef Mike, and I had never been to a vigil before. You see it on TV all the time, and if you've never been, it was very eye-opening. There were balloons and there were candles, and it seemed very, very rote. The people that made speeches about Chef Mike seemed to me as if they had made that speech for somebody else in the past. And Baltimore City provides social workers that are there with their brochures. Channel 2 and Channel 13 are leaning up against the fence. And Chef Mike's mom's sitting in a folding chair, and every time she lost it, Channel 11's camera was right up in her face. And the kids that we had brought from camp, brought from Carver to camp, I knew were going to be there. But what happened that I didn't expect that day is that some of those kids were not living in Baltimore anymore. They were often 3, 4, 5 hours away, and they had no way to get to that vigil. But they were there because the kids that they had met at camp that had cars and had transportation got in their cars, drove 4.5 hours to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, for example, and picked them up and made sure that they were there and they were going to take them back. The tragic events of that day revealed to me the close bonds and rapport that the camp experience had fostered in this racially diverse group. To me, it was amazing. To them, it was normal. It was as if they had grown up with the other kid from Pikesville in the bunk across from them. And I couldn't let it go. Just kept playing in my head for a couple of months. And eventually, I went over to a friend of mine who was the director of Beth Tefillah camps, and I told him the story. And I said to him, David, if I could find you 2 kids to recreate this program at your camp, would you be interested? And he said, as long as they go through the interview process and so on, it'd be my pleasure. So back to Carver Votech I went, and with some of the kids that we took from there, we interviewed about 27 kids and picked out 2 of them, set up the interview process for them at Beth Tefillah camp, and they were hired. But if you think the logistics of bringing counselors to overnight camp, where they go once at the beginning of the summer, and they're there, was complicated. It fails in comparison to getting a kid every day from the Gilmore homes to Reisterstown as part of their camp experience. I also learned that there were lots of logistics that were associated with it that I hadn't experienced before. For example, Beth Tefillah pays the kids every 2 weeks, and they want to do it as direct deposit. So I said to them, give them your bank account number, and they looked at me like, what bank account? So I said, well, go with your parents and open up a bank account, and they didn't want to do that because their parents would have to co-sign for them. And there isn't a lot of money. Any money that comes into the house is going to be for the house. And so they ultimately had to go to a check cashing place every couple of weeks and give up close to 20% of their summer salary to work at camp. But we endured. We figured out all of those logistics, and following the success of the pilot summers, we decided that we were going to form an official 501c3. We call it Cultural Logistics. And basically what Cultural Logistics does is provide the structure and support for individuals or groups like me who want to start projects that play a role in reversing our community's geographic separation. So with the help of Cultural Logistics, we're ready this summer to move the Bunk Life project of Cultural Logistics into full implementation. We have been interviewing. In fact, last Thursday was one of our interview nights. We have been identifying, interviewing, and hiring 10 counselors who will participate this summer. And we've received commitments from 5 of the Jewish camps that serve the Baltimore area, Erie Louise, Capitol, Camp Shorish, and Beth Tefillah. We've hired 3 program navigators, a day camp navigator, an overnight camp navigator, and somebody from the community who will be responsible for providing ongoing support for all the participants and will assist us in formally evaluating the program at the end of the summer. We've also identified, and we're going to pay, an on-site camp point person at each camp who will participate in the training and who will assist with the day-to-day support of the counselors and implementation of the cultural exchange. And we're implementing a pre-season training program for everybody to provide the overview of our program, assisting with applications, interviews, key job skills, development of expertise in working with children in a camp setting, and so on. And we're managing all the logistics for all these people. So after Rabbi Goldstein and I talked, and he asked me to present here today about my experiences, I asked myself what outcomes would I hope to gain by sharing this story. First, I move you, as Rabbi Goldstein said before I came up, to get involved. Often when I tell the bunk life story, individuals have been playing similar ideas in their heads and they relate their interests, but they don't know how to start and get the not-for-profit status set up. So we've set up Cultural Logistics as an umbrella organization for starting projects like this faster. If you have any ideas, let's talk and see if we can fit you under our umbrella and at our roundtable. And then personally, help me build the Bunk Life Project. That was the other outcome that I hoped I could find here today. One of the things that I've learned about myself during this experience is that even though I could confidently get all of you together in a game of capture the flag very, very quickly, I find it awkward to seek help, especially financial help or contacts with the project. I want you to know it's challenging for me to stand up here and say that the costs of implementing this program are not extensive and that so many of the people, including myself, are doing this purely as volunteer work, but I found that there are expenses. And I have some brochures and contact information. I'll be glad to leave them in the lobby when I leave, and if you can help, it'd be great. And then furthermore, anything that you can do to help spread the word of this project will go a long way in solidifying our foundation. It might be able to provide us with some contacts that can help us with grants and so on. And of course, we're online at culturallogistics.org and on Facebook and Instagram and everything like that, so you can find out more information and contact us that way. I told one of our participants, Jahid, he was at Beth Tefillah Camp, he's a senior this year at the Renaissance Academy in Baltimore, that I would be speaking with you this morning about the Bunk Life Project. And I asked him to write down something I could say to you, and here's what he told me to tell you. I quote, "I've never been to a summer camp before, and I didn't know anything about it. I was hired as the co-head counselor for 5- and 6-year-old boys to build a bond and make sure they enjoyed their summer. I went to every activity, swimming and playing sports with them, and I loved it. I made bonds with the kids, and I learned how to handle younger kids and communicate at their level. It was a great opportunity. I live in the city, and the environment is different. I told them what it's like to live in the city and know how different it is for me to be here. Being exposed to a different culture and different environment made me a better person. The kids made an impact on me. I remember all of them. The kids, parents, and staff sent letters to me, and that made me realize my accomplishments. I can't wait to see them again next year. Oh, and be sure to tell everybody that I said Shabbat Shalom." Thank you very much for your time today.
Yes, I can come. Stay there. Yasher Koach to Rick for everything that he's done. I think you could see he truly has become a helper in a community in many ways, which I know have touched us. So first of all, Rick, you'll remind me if I forget to do this, but we can take your talk and my introduction from our live stream and we can send it out to the congregation so that the audience, for those that are watching this morning or that might be interested in see, I'm sure that Rick will be available after services during our Kiddush if you have questions or want to help or have some suggestions. But I also couldn't help, since you stood up here and said, well, you've been up here since with the kids in the mitzvah and ufrafim and all of that, but your bar mitzvah and your dad that wrote your speech, that you are in a different way contributing to the legacy of your dad, because your dad, of course, for decades and decades was our gabbai here. And the word gabbai in Hebrew means helper.